to Nehemiah, and we're going to unpack that a little bit. But before that, I want to place it in the context of families. Today's families. I don't like this term fight. It's a combative, militaristic term. But how do we understand that? But fight is all too common in our homes. Maybe we should ask your neighbor. They can testify to the fact that all the screaming and conflicts that you hear from your houses. And when you come to Sunday morning, we don't fight. We are the perfect family in San Diego. And if you don't have fights, you have a much more serious problem in your house. So fights and conflicts are inevitable in every household. And but we'll talk about what does it mean. And so recognize the forces that undermines marriages and family life. Whether it's between husband and wife, between parents and children, maybe with your neighbors and maybe with your in-laws. All of these people surrounding us, how that creates challenges for us. So fighting family to fighting for your family. And so the enemy is not within the home that we begin to fight with each other. Enemy is outside. And maybe enemy is an issue. So how do you fight for the family? How does a fighting family becomes fighting for the family? So what we want to talk this morning is about conflicts. And how do we navigate through the conflicts? How do we resolve and learn and mature through the conflicts? Our goal is not to have conflict or to have a conflict-free marriage or a family. And our goal is to how do we learn and grow, mature in matters of relationship, understand situation and complexities of real life, and how do we go this? And we're going to draw from the scripture principles about it. And I call this as the principle of the second half. In the sense that when you are in some stage in life, you're done 5 years of marriage, maybe 20 years of marriage. The next 5 or next 20 years is going to look very differently from the past season that you have gone through just now. And so we're going to look at this mid-stage, midlife stages of transition and how do we going to navigate through this. What are some brokenness within our unit of household? And how do we understand this brokenness and pain that is caused by conflicts that you're facing? Maybe coming and driving down to here to this church this Sunday morning. You and your wife had a major fight. Remember, pastor told us to get here at 10:45, whatever your time is, and your kids are not ready, and driving here was a big argument that broke out. You're wondering, how did I know? Yeah, I know what goes on, because we do the same thing. So these are real life challenges, and we're going to talk about it. But I have this example. I want you to be the psychology teacher. What do you think is going on in this house? Huh? Yeah, this is not a typical sermon, I'm not preaching. I want you to interact and tell me. So imagine, we keep your imaginary hat. Tell me what's going on in this house. Arguments. Major, conflict, and husband and wife is fighting over something. Okay? So did I tell you how many times do I have to remind you? How do you keep saying the same thing again and again? Leave me alone. Can you imagine these kind of conversation going on? Okay, how about this one? What's going on in this house? Huh?
Power struggle.
Power struggle? What else? I'm going to show you who is right. I'm going to defeat you. I want to make a point. I want to have it my way. And nobody is wanting to let go. And this goes on in every house. How about this house? What's going on in this house? Huh? Come on. They are tug of war. What is the tug of war here? About money. Two people working. Who makes more money? I should have more say what we do with money. I want to give money to my 5 parents. But the other person doesn't want to give money to the in-laws. Somebody wants to buy one car. Somebody has a preference for a house. All of this is a major issue and tension within houses. Okay, how about this? It is getting serious stuff now. Somebody gets out a, boxing gloves. Okay. Battle lines are drawn clearly. Arguments are over. No more conversation and fights now. They're getting physical. I'm going to show you what I am made of. You're out of there to defeat your mate and to prove yourself. That's what is going on in this house. I'm going to hurt you. I'm going to hurt you real bad that you'll remember for the rest of your life. Domestic violence is very high in the Indian American households. Lots of conflicts, lots of fights. They get physical. Men here, Indian American households, men are violent. Many, many houses. You know some neighbors, not about you, but you know some people. Battle lines are drawn. How about this home? What's going on? Somebody got a headache here. What goes on in many, many bedrooms in the Indian American households? Sex life is all gone. I know there are kids here. I'm not going much more into it. How about this? What's going on in this house? Is what we call as a long distance marriages and households. Many men in our community, especially technology industry, Monday through Friday, they live in another city. They're only weekend families. Only husband flies back. They live in 2 different cities. I have a family. They live very close to us. 10, 15 minutes from where we live. Every Monday morning, the gentleman flies to San Jose to work in the Bay Area. The wife flies to Manhattan, to New York to work in the Wall Street. Monday through Friday, they are in their respective cities, but they're living in Chicago. Long distance marriages take a toll in relationship. And then finally, what's going on in this house? The man and the woman is going in different direction. They're ripping apart and pulling it in different directions. Priorities are different. Their vision for life is different. What they're pursuing is different, and it creates a tear on the marriage and in the home. So all these are typical scenarios. These images reflect something about who we are, what we are going on in our homes. I want you to understand that fights and conflicts are inevitable. Our goal should not be have a conflict-free marriage. Disagreements and disputes are bound to happen. If there are 2 people living together under one roof, if you're sharing a bed together, you must have some kind of differences of opinion. If one person does not have any say at all, that's not a marriage and that's not a relationship. If you want your kids to learn managing people, relationship with their friends, have social circles and media, you must give them skills to navigate through conflict and learning how you can resolve differences and continue to be focused on tasks that is ahead of us. We must learn the art of seeking and granting forgiveness. There is no resolution. Sometimes some issues are too complicated for us to come to a common terms. We must not keep the ledgers of what we call as historical. One gentleman came to a psychologist and says that my wife gets hysterical. He says that, oh, no. Do you mean historical? No. I mean historical. I said, what do you mean? When we get into a fight, my wife says, oh, in 1995, when we were in Chennai, we had this fight. She still remembers from 25 years ago when they were first married. Those conflicts are still fresh in their mind. We don't know how to let go and forgive each other and willing to move ahead. What does it mean? How do we learn? And some cultural aspect that comes in and seeps into our marriages and our homes. And external interferences. Conflicts, Gary Chapman of 5 Love Languages says, conflicts are not a sign that you're married to a wrong person. Sometimes people are jumping into conflict, jumping into conclusion, saying that I'm having all these problems with my wife or my husband because I married the wrong person. No. That's the wrong conclusion. They simply are affirming that we are human. And there are 2 people. Our differences of opinion will come. I want to give you the background of Nehemiah and unpack this passage and draw some principles for our lives and our marriages today. Nehemiah's story begins with broken temples, and the geographical and historical dates are like this. Jerusalem is destroyed in 587 BC. People are taken as exile to Babylon, a faraway country, and Persia now comes and defeats Babylon. So Persian Empire is ruling the region and the Jewish people. Then the Persian king allows them to return back to Jerusalem. And in 538, and then they begin to rebuild the temple that was destroyed. Solomon builds his grand temple. That's a picture of Solomon's temple. It's completely destroyed. And now they want to rebuild the temple again. And so Nehemiah is one of them who begins to build the walls around the city of Jerusalem. And Nehemiah goes back to Jerusalem with this vision that God has given. My land of my ancestors are broken. My city is broken. The gates are burned down. I'm going to do something about it. The map is this. This is where Jerusalem is. See the Mediterranean Ocean and Cyprus. And Jerusalem, they're taken around all the way to Babylon, which is Baghdad and Iraq today, and where Israel and Jerusalem is. And so that's kind of the geographical map where they were taken on exile. And this is how they begin to return a couple of generations later. So we're looking at, here is Nehemiah. Nehemiah is like the cupbearer of the king in a foreign land. It is equivalent to being a chief of staff in the White House. Here is a president in a foreign land. Here is a chief of staff who's managing the entire staff that is accounting and working for the White House and the president. So the most trusted person in the entire kingdom. Here is a foreign guy who climbs up the ladder, becomes the most important person for the king in Susa, a Persian empire. He hears a report that something is happening in Jerusalem. The brothers who came back from Jerusalem gave this report, about a status report of what's happening in Jerusalem. His heart is broken. He begins to weep and cry, sits down and begins to pray for his people and his land. Then he goes to the king. King finds him that he is sad. Why are you sad in king's presence? You're not supposed to come to the king's presence with sore eyes and, after weeping and sleepless nights of prayer. So king finds out what is happening, what's bothering his most trusted servant. And he says, Lord, give me the permission. I want to make a trip back to my homeland and do something. And then he takes on, he gives him the project, gives him the blessing, gives him the letters to travel along, take the timber, whatever you need from the resources of the empire, and go and do what you need to do. So, but then as he reaches there, he begins the project. And he gets into lots and lots of conflicts. Lots of conflict with people who are opposing him. The team is tired and exhausted. They're complaining about it. The motivation is running dry. How do we manage people? How do we do this? And we know that eventually he completed the entire project in 52 days. Remarkable venture. If you ever been to Jerusalem, some of those remnants even now, if you study the history of Jerusalem, you understand what really happened there. Fascinating what one man could do and how he changed the course of the history. But I want to unpack not less of the story. You must have done a Bible study about it. I want to particularly look at how do you handle conflict and handling opposition. And in chapter 4, open chapter 4 and we look at a few verses. Nehemiah chapter 4, beginning at verse 1. Now Sanballat heard that there was a building a wall, and he was angry. He was greatly enraged, and he jeered at the Jews. What are these guys? Feeble guys coming to our city. They thought we had Jerusalem for ourselves. These guys are returning, and they're trying to challenge and to rebuild this city. Remember, the three guys. One is the Sanballat guy. He's a Horonite. He's from the north. And this guy, Tobiah, is an Ammonite who is from the east. And there's one more guy, Gershom, in the story. He's from the south. Remember, three guys from all three sides. Of course, the west side is Mediterranean Ocean. So from all three sides, opposition is rising. He's cornered. He's centered right in the middle. With feeble people, exhausted, resources are running low now. Motivation is running low. How do we handle opposition? Opposition is intensifying over time. First time the Nehemiah come to Jerusalem, they were just disturbed. Chapter 2, verse 10. But by the time of verse 19 in chapter 2, they're mildly amused. What are these guys going to do? By the time chapter 4 once, it is intensified. It is greatly incensed by what is happening. Sanballat gathers his allies and begins to scorn at the efforts that Jewish people are making. He belittles the Jews. He derides the ambition and restores the desire to restore the walls in a day. They mocks at their optimism, magnifies the problem, and they says that, hey, even a fox were to climb on the wall will crumble. They start ridiculing him and making fun of him and his entire construction team. Verse 3, Tobiah the Ammonite beside him and said, yes, they are trying to build. Even if a force goes on it, walls will break down. So in the midst of all this confusion and opposition from outside, here is a man who turns to prayer. And look at his prayer in verse 4. Hear, O God, we are being despised. Turn the back against their towns and are on their own heads. Give them up to to be plundered in a land where they are captives. Do not cover their guilt. He's getting offensive now. Do not cover the guilt. Let not the sin be blotted out, the way you have done with us, your people. And then verse 6. So we built the wall, and all the walls was joined together to the half height, for the people had mind to work. How you build a wall to a half height, which is 5 to 6 feet, and how you build the second half, 6 feet to 10 feet or 12 feet, is a different ball game. At the 6 feet height, you can build something. It'll take you somewhere. You can build from ground up because you're on your feet. If you want to build something from 6 feet to 10 feet, you need a ladder. You need to raise the resources and the stones and the bricks to a different height altogether. How you build your family in the first half, first 10 years will be one way. You had your kids and maybe you moved and found a job. But the next 10 years is going to be a different ball game. As your kids turn teenagers, as you release them to college, this is going to be a different ball game. As a church, 10 years, 15 years, you did certain things. That's one way to do it. But the next 10 years of your church life is going to be different, because you're trying to build at a different height, different altitude of building a community of faith. It requires different strategy, different resources, different way of looking at it. How you play a game, whether you play football or cricket or soccer or whatever your game, first half of the game, you have certain strategies to play the game. Second half, you change your strategy. If you are into sporting coaching, you understand this. Because the second half of the game, depending on where you are in the score, how you have played in the first half, second half has to have a different strategy. That's what I want you to look at it. You are in the season, critical juncture in your stage of life. When you are 20s and 30s, you do life, and your priorities in life are very different. Once you begin your 40s, when you begin your 50s, you have to change your strategy. You have to change your focus. You can't do life the same way again. So half-completed project. What are some half-completed projects in your home, in your church? How do we foresee the next season of your life? How do we transition and understand handling the next stage of your life? Half-completed project. Plan to attack Jerusalem here. The enemies are coming around. Problems are arising. It's multiplying. New levels of complexities are arising. How do we navigate through these conflicts? People are grumbling now. They are exhausted. They lost hope. When you begin a new project, whether you're doing a backyard, a gardening, or maybe solving a puzzle with your kids, or doing some household construction project. When you start, there's high level of motivation. You want to jump onto a project. You want to do something. But after some time, when your energy is exhausted, when your motivation is low, what carried you from the beginning until now will not carry you from now to the next season, the end of next season. We must understand that. People are discouraged now. The immensity. Sitting in Susa, build some wall, wonderful, let's go. Let's jump on it. They began the project. Now they're realizing it is hard. The terrain is tough. We don't get the natural resources that we needed. We don't have enough timber. All that we brought from Susa and Lebanon is all run out now. We needed more resources. It's like a building project. Halfway through, say that all the fund is gone. How do I finish the project now? Or you're doing a software project. Halfway through, you're saying that what brought us here, I think we have new realities that we did not foresee when we started the software project. They're discouraged. There's no unity, division within the team. Husband and wife are two different at logheads, fighting over everything now. All because of one issue that arose, maybe because we have children, something at home, or financial problem. People learning what does it mean to sacrifice for people? When you lose somebody that you pinned your hope on for your project, something happens to them. In the midst of complexities, in the midst of problems, and seasons of life and transitions, here is a lesson for us, all of us, no matter where we are in life's journey. And that comes from the second half principle. We build our walls to this until it reached the half its heights, and all the people worked hard with one heart. You know, this book is so filled with amazing principles of leadership, lessons for how do you mobilize resources, how you cast a vision, how do you learning to pray, your utter dependence on God. A man who is very resourceful, but yet is utterly dependent on God. Even before he utters before his king, he's saying, I said a prayer to God. Just fascinating heart that I see of this man. And it's just so beautiful. He is so dependent. He is very practical, the need for the resources. He takes on the challenges head on. And in the midst of all of that, he begins to honor God all along and honors people and celebrates successes. So in the second half, how do you do this? Verse 14. After I looked over the things, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and rest of the people, his construction crew, his project team. And this is what he says: don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of the opposition and people who are ridiculing you and putting you down, saying that you can never complete this. Don't be afraid of them. He takes head on the challenges that is facing at the midpoint of the project. He takes the stock of the scenario, what's going on. He recasts the vision now. A second stage, second season, the second half of the game. The coach is telling the team, hey, here is where we stand. This is where the score is. You have next 60 minutes or half a day or 10 overs or whatever game you're playing. This is how strategy going to be for the second half of the game. Do not be afraid. We are underdogs now. We are behind. We are trailing 5-0, whatever your score is of the halftime of the game. Do not be afraid of the other team, because the fear is something that can completely debilitate us. People who have faced fears and the challenges of health, or challenges of financial bankruptcy, if you're running a business, you understand what does it mean. Fear can grip you and kind of completely debilitate you. Sometimes we must take on the fear head on. Do not be afraid of your enemy. Do not be afraid to take on an issue that is facing your problem. One by one. Second, remember the Lord who is great and awesome. This man's vision of God, his God-centeredness, centered perspective on life and managing and providing leadership. And then he says, fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wife and for your home. What is he really doing here? First time he called people, come, let's go back and build the city of Jerusalem. Build the walls that are broken down, build the gates that are burned down. People comes along. They want to do something. Everybody wants to be something bigger than themselves. They want to be a larger project. That I can be a part of a great team and we can together do something that we cannot do by ourselves. A compelling vision is very powerful. People are drawn to it and they do it. But they build from zero to halfway. Wonderful. That vision can take us only to halfway. But the halfway, they now run out of steam. They don't have motivation to sustain it. You're done 2 years of engineering, now things are getting really hard. I don't think I can finish my major in pediatrics. I don't think I'll get a fellowship in this area in any medical colleges in America. You know, you come halfway through, did I make the right choice? Maybe engineering is not my thing. Maybe I should do psychology or whatever the field is. Young people these days change their minds several times even during college years. All of these challenges as they face, I want you to draw this lesson from him. This guy Nehemiah says that do not be afraid. Remember the Lord your God who has called us into it. And then he recasts the vision. You're not just building a city. You're not just building a wall. You're not just building a gates of somebody else. He's saying that you are doing this for your family. He personalizes the grand vision, a big vision to each individual now. Your sons and daughters, your wives and your home. You are doing this for yourself. This is the recasting of the vision. For the second half, we have less resources and less energy and motivation. How do we sustain and get people on board with the vision? And it requires them to find a stake for themselves. I'm not doing this because of Nehemiah. I am not doing this for your project manager. I'm doing this something that you have a personal stake in the project. Fight for your families. You're being part of a great church here in San Diego. It is not you're doing this for Pastor Alex. You're not doing this because, I got some, food when I was sick. You're doing this for your kids. As a community, we all need each other. We together do this for God's glory. You will face challenges in the next season of your church. But what does it mean to be together? And realize that this is for my own good. This is for my own kids. This is for my own husband and wife. Because together we are better off. Across languages and cultures and leadership styles and all the complexities that will bring in. It's easy to create a language-based churches. But it's very difficult to maintain a vision-driven, a mission-oriented, a God-centered purpose of a faith community. You must stay together, stick together, keep the grander vision ahead. Realize that in that we will all stand to benefit more than we will ever do in our own little churches. Fight for your families. There is something at stake here. So here is the strategy for the second half. Nehemiah assesses the condition of the church and what's happening in the community. He's not overcome by the fear. He has this renewed confidence in God. And he comes out with this new strategy, a sense of ownership. You must have a stake in this game. Because you're not winning the game when you're down under. You're doing this for your professional career, your own passion for this field. A new plan to rebuilding. And it's very interesting how he did. First half did amazing things. How he built so quickly. Sometimes it's the 80-20 rules, I'd say. Sometimes you can build 80% of the thing, with 20% of the time. You will move the first half of the game very fast. But the second half is extremely tricky. Is how do you manage that? And that's why we need a new game plan. The new strategy is, guards are appointed. All this time, there was no need for guards. Because now people opposition are coming to fight the Jewish workers. And he said, in one hand you will carry a sword, with the other hand you lay a brick. So that simply means, if there are 100 people, 30 people are taken off to be a guards. They are manning the fences now. They're walking around the fence so that no enemies comes in here. And the rest of the 60 people who are laying brick over brick, now they have a brick, swords on one hand and brick on another hand. That means productivity is reduced to 50%. So only 30 people are working now. So do you see how resources are limited, people are limited, because people have to do new things now, halfway through the project. Then he says, when the trumpet blast comes, all these scattered people who are building walls in different parts of the city, they all had to reassemble together where the trumpet is blown, so that we can together fight the enemies who is coming through those gaps. Because where the walls are built and they're taking from 6 feet to 12 feet, they're building and climbing up. So they're up on the ladder and trying to lay a rock at the 10 feet. When you hear the trumpet call, leave your job, come and do something else. You join together with your brothers and fight the enemy who is coming through those gaps between the walls, where there are no walls standing. Reassurance that God will fight for us. We have a long hours of work now. They stand at guard in the night and they work during the day. So it's a 12-hour shift of work and 12-hour shifts of keeping the guard. I don't know when they slept. They're literally 24 hours. Call people. Next season of life is going to be more demanding, more stretching. We'll call for more sacrifices. When your kids turn teenagers, it's the next stage of life. Don't think it's all done. You got to gear up and put your resources together, you and your spouse, and got to team up together and stay together as a team. He brought in outsiders to guard the duty. Look for other resources that you need as a church that will help you to thrive and go to the next stage of next season in your church. Then he says that, do not take off your clothes. You're going to go sleep in the night wearing your work clothes. That means a sword will be hanging by the side of your work clothes. You can't take off. You're literally keeping the sword next to you because enemies are coming to fight in the night. So because when you're sleeping, if you hear the trumpet call, the enemies are attacking you, you have no time in the darkness to go look for the weapons. You got to have that ready. You should be ready to fight even in the middle of your sleep. You are prepared to take on the challenges that you'll face. Do not take off your clothes, even in your sleep, and wear and carry the weapon all the time. What a brilliant change of strategy. And how he completes the project. He did some 40-some days, 20-some days in the first half. Next 30, 40 days was very hard. Second half, next season of your life and ministry will demand more from you. More commitment, more sacrifices, more resources, and greater resolve to navigate through the new challenges that you do not see right now. New plan of rebuilding, verse 15 through 23. And in chapter 5, it is not just for us. He's beginning to take care of other people. He's helping the poor in the city. They are signing up for the project now. They said, oh man, this is good for all of us. Not for those Jewish people who came from Susa, who are well-to-do, who had wonderful careers out there, but they're coming and doing this for us. And they are signing on now. And in chapter 6, we see how attacks are thwarted. A defeated, a drained, exhausted group of people have new vigor to fight and to complete the project. Immigrant household, as we transition from a great joint family system that our forefathers had done for centuries, and we begin to do nuclear families here. Aspirations and opportunity. Once in a lifetime opportunity America will offer to you. I came to America when I was 21. American companies offered what probably would dream of. Millions of dollars of responsibility, a large territory to manage. It's like a dream job for a 20-some-year-old guy. It's incredible. Only American can give you this. But sometimes we get swept away by the opportunities that is there in America. What you can do in a lifetime, probably in a few years, what probably your parents have done entire lifetime of earning. You can make that kind of money here in a few years, or maybe just in a year. All of this opportunities and aspiration just gets on a hyperdrive. And that we start running on this rat race to win it all and make it big. And then we have the shame of seeking help. I project an image about myself. I don't know where to go and seek help. And we talked about some of this over this weekend. In the midst of all that, often family is neglected. There's no support system. You don't have any family that you can really open up and talk things that really ache your heart. Some real hard issues that you're going through. An infertility. Suddenly you are having a baby who has some mental issues. Should I abort or should I carry on with the pregnancy? How do I talk to this with people? My son, I'm having a really hard time. My daughter is pregnant. Who do I talk to? How do our community embrace these kind of challenges? You need a support system. That's where church comes into play, folks. You just can't do nuclear life yourself. No matter how much of money and wealth and success and how smart you are, you need other people to do life better. The church comes in the way. We do life together. It takes a village to raise a kid. It is even more harder here in America in 21st century with all the modern challenges. It takes a church to raise the next generation. You can't do it alone. You got to build alternative support structure and scaffolding and structures around you as a nuclear family who can walk with you and on these journeys and the challenges of life. Our cultural orientation, our ethnocentrism, our narrow way of looking at life, because that's all I have known. I've grown up in Guntur for the last 35 years. I don't know anything else. That's all my little world was. But once I get displaced out of that, my world rocks and changes. That's one of the purposes. You didn't choose to come to San Diego. I often tell immigrants, it is that wonderful verse, I was wandering around the world. I lived in many countries and many continents, and I was just completely confused. And suddenly I had this revelation from the book of Acts, chapter 17. It says, God determines the time and the place where you should live. You did not choose to be in America. It is God's idea. God placed you here. The brother who's going to Austin, God is taking you to Austin. with His purpose, His intention. God scatters people, then He gathers people. The word for scattering is diaspora. Scattered people in Jewish, in Greek. And then this word called ecclesia, that means gathering. He scatters people in order to gather them. Then the gathered one, He scatters again for His purpose and His mission. So brother, you are a missionary to Austin, sent by the IC of San Diego. You came from Chennai or Coimbatore to San Diego. God has sent you from Coimbatore to be a missionary here in San Diego. You have to be part of the mission of God and do that along with others. And so all of us, no matter where we find ourselves, we are in the mission of God. That's our identity. Invariably, by the way, we also do a job in Qualcomm just to pay my bill. But primary identity is I'm a missionary of God. Immigrant people have to see themselves as missionaries. That is your larger identity. If you are a child of God, if you know Jesus personally, if you have said, I obey Him, I'll follow Him, you have been brought here with this purpose, to be a part of God's work. People in America, people in California and Southern California need the gospel. They need to hear that from an Indian. Recently, a friend of mine who said that a white guy, he never showed up. He was so hurt by the church experience growing up in America. 2 or 3 generations they never went to church. He met an Indian Christian. And he says, hey, you're a Christian? How can you be Christian? You should be a Hindu. You're from India, right? No, I am a Christian. I love Jesus. What Jesus has done in my life, he shares his testimony. Then this man begins to argue, hey, an Indian guy can be a Christian? And this guy is so fired up? Then Christianity must be true. He started reinvestigating. Every week, he wants to meet with this Indian brother for coffee. And he asks all these questions about Christianity. This is what I thought Christianity was. This is what I heard from my father. But why do you believe this? Why do you believe Jesus is true? Jesus is the only way. Didn't you guys have millions of gods? Why do you think Jesus is the only way? Come on, tell me. A white guy is asking an Indian brother. And he came to know the Lord recently. And guess what? He asked this Indian brother to take him to a church. He wants to get baptized and join church. So he takes him to American church. He said, no. I don't want to go to American church. I want to come to the Indian church. Because you are the Indian guy who led me to Jesus. You are here as a missionary. Whether you work for Google or Qualcomm or whoever you work for, or City of San Diego or California. God brings us here, scatters people. Once you understand your role in God's kingdom agenda, we'll have a different way of looking at work and all that we do with life. Marital conflicts. Often that we see is unmet expectation. I thought I'll come to America and I'll do all this. Unresolved issues from past life, when we were in India or maybe when we were in New York or wherever your previous career was. Lots of personality clashes. 20, 25 years married, you're not resolved, you understand each other's personality. You're still fighting over it. Lots of abuse and addiction that goes on. And pressures of work and just doing life in America. Baggages from past life, lots of financial troubles. In spite that we make so much more money than much of America, we still have lots of debt and lots of complications. Then it's external interferences. Our mother-in-law sitting in India, in Kerala, still decides what should be the menu this weekend here in San Diego. They should decide when I should have kids. Sitting there. They don't understand I'm doing 100-hour work here. I travel to 3 cities every week. And why you're not having kids still. Some of these challenges, somebody else is pulling the remote control and pulling the strings for us. And putting lots of pressure on us. The difficulty with the marriage is that we fall in love with the personality, but we must live out with the character, the person. The challenge of the person and the personality. I look at the Shaadi.com and I see a profile of a person. I fall in love with the matrimonial site and the person on the profile. But then when you get married, you're beginning to live with that person. Then you argue that, hey, you are not like the profile that I read in Shaadi 2 years ago. That was a profile. So there is me and there is this improved me. Improved me is what we put in the matrimonial profile. Then we get married. This improved you is very different from the real you. Then you say, your hair looks different. I thought, oh, you are like that, Bollywood actress. But your hair is all over. It's already turning gray. You're only 25. All kinds of problems people have. Because they are falling in love with the profile. Not with the real person. Don't know how to judge the character and navigate through the challenges of modern life.
success orientation. Often kids are caught between it. What does it mean? Their own career choices and preferences and all this complication. We saw those pictures and we saw how that plays out in every home. Broken walls of the families. What are some broken walls and burnt gates of today's immigrant households of Indian community? Busyness, long hours, demanding careers, doing multiple shifts, working for China, India, Europe, and America's work schedules. We also have many inherited dysfunctionalities. I call immigrant household as a cauldron of dysfunctionalities. All the complication of navigating through true cultures just comes to blow up within the home. A lot of emotional disconnect. We're just going through autopilot mode within the marriage. A betrayal of trust. We have hurt each other deeply, and those hurts are still there. Don't just put a band-aid and think that these problems are over and handled. All those things, unhandled issues. Some of us need to go seek counselors and get some help. Do some real therapeutic work to heal and cleanse and come out of it more healthy and positive way. Financial mess. We don't plan and manage. We choose and make decisions and get into real financial mess. Sexless marriages. Life is going on. This is a reality in many households. Role confusion. We expect the men and women roles to be changed within one generation. We did it one way. Our parents and our grandparents did life very differently. And we are doing two-income households and the challenges of that. And addictive behaviors. What are some broken walls in your home? If there's no time for each other, there's no time to be together in raising kids. You have no strategy, no game plan. You don't understand what the kids are going through. Simply going through the motions of life. We are faking it big time before everyone else. But guess what? You can never fake it before your kids. They see the reality. They see the brokenness. They see the confusion. They see you fight with each other. All of that creates lots and lots of confusion. Rebuild the broken walls of your family. This is what the fighting for your family is all about. Understand where there is brokenness. What does it mean to restore trust again? What does it mean to open those communication channels that have been shut down? You haven't really had a heart-to-heart talk with your spouse for many years because he never listens, she never understands, what I'm going through. When are we going to get over this? When are we going to work on the real problems that we have? So what does it mean to seek and grant forgiveness? I'm not going to hold this against you. I release you. And this is once for all, we are said and done and we have resolved it. We are not going to talk about this anymore. I'm not going to hold you accountable for this again. We have to come to that point at some point of time. Let's breathe in some fresh hope and life into our marriages, in our households. What does it mean to be a fun guy to be around? What does it mean to get some help right now? And what does it mean to pray together and grow together as a family? Forgiveness. What is forgiveness? It's a very difficult idea sometimes in many Indian households. You must understand that your spouse is not your enemy. Even if you fight against your wife or husband and you win the fight, you still lost the game. I learned this when I used to play badminton for my high school. We had the two best badminton players in the entire city, all the colleges, all the schools. But we always won the first and second place in the city. But when it comes to the doubles game, we always lost. So my coach tells me, he said, turns to your teammate and tell that he is on your own team. He's not your enemy. Because we were so good in playing, we often played against each other. But when you play doubles, you got to change your strategy. You're in the same team. So my coach's biggest problem, we have the best players in the school district, but we always fail the doubles game. Because even when you start playing the doubles, you're actually fighting against each other. You need to understand that you're now together as a team. Your opposition team is on the other side, not on your court. That applies to marriages too. Your spouse is not the enemy. You're not fighting against your spouse. There is an issue that is out there. We got to fight together at that issue and handle the problem. The problem is brushed aside. Your spouse becomes the enemy. You are out to defeat that person because your ego is driving now. What does it mean to not have the right to punish the other person? You don't have to get even and get right. You're not always right either. What does it mean to admit the hurt? All that you have said, examine the offense, lovingly confront your spouse and seek for forgiveness.
Brush aside the Indian ego, the male ego. Ask for forgiveness from your wife and from your children for some of the things that you have said to them. And children, ask for forgiveness from your parents. What does it mean to understand the authority that God has entrusted you, that you should be born in that particular household? It's not your choice. You can never choose who your parents are. That is God's choice. God has placed you in a particular household. There must be some purpose for that. He has entrusted you as an authority figure under which you must thrive and grow. Don't fight against your parents. They may not agree with you on all things. They might have some Indian way of doing it. But God's agenda is, God has placed you in that particular household. You better come to terms. My dad, my mom may not be right all the time. But I am, as long as I live under this roof, I am committed to the authority figure that God has placed on you. It's not my choice. I still had to say yes to my dad. Dad didn't know all the choices that I was making. I was out there in Singapore and Hong Kong and California, big high-flying job. He doesn't understand the complexities. When I was transitioning into ministry, I was dashing all his dreams and hope, leaving this wonderful, lucrative career to be a poor missionary. I said, I'm not going to step into ministry unless my dad gives. I was a godly man. He loves the Lord. I'm saying that I'm going to submit myself to his leadership. I'm an adult now. I can choose what I want to do. I was 30 years old. I still subjected, unless my mom and dad blesses me and releases me, I'm not going to go into ministry. I could have easily walked away and done my things. I don't need his money. I don't need things. I have made my life myself. God was calling me to do it. I subjected myself to the authority because they had born. Until the day they went down to the grave, they've been one of my greatest prayer supporters. Some 20 years they walked with me. It was amazing to know that mom and dad is with you on where God is calling you to do. So in spite of your differences with your parents, young men and women, listen to me. I know being coconut is extremely hard, growing up in a foreign culture. Your mom and dad won't understand many of the things that you go through. Please communicate with them. Rope in your parents to be on your side. Be together as a family. Your parents can be some of your greatest blessing as you navigate through the challenges of modern life and make your choices in life. Forgive your parents. Some of the things that they've said. Let go. Don't hold on to it. Hold on to the grumbling and all the spirit that is dwelling inside of us. And create this distance between parents and children. Parents, be a little more understanding. Growing up being a coconut is extremely difficult. We meet young people. I struggled through what does it mean to grow up in another culture. I was suicidal. I attempted suicide. I struggled through that. Hundreds of young people in this country that I met and ministered to. It is extremely hard. Have some compassion. Have some love. Give them some leeway. Love them in spite of all the difficulty that you have. And forgive them for some of the rash thing that they say to you. Don't hold it against them. Love them in spite of them, who they are and what they call you to do. Let pretensions over, forgetting an unconditional love. What does it mean to forgive each other as Christ has forgiven you? I often say that our inability to forgive somebody is primarily because we haven't understood how much we are forgiven in Jesus Christ. More you understand the forgiveness of God, more you understand what cross has done for you, more you understand the death of Christ and what God has accomplished for all the violence that we have done against God. God is unconditionally loving us and forgiving us. If you and I are being transformed into the likeness of God, you and I will become more forgiving people. You need to forgive your spouse. You need to forgive your children. Start afresh some things. Don't carry on the baggages year after year. What does it mean to be completely humble and gentle, being patient and bearing with one another? Ephesians 4. Finally, I want you to call you to one more action item. From Nehemiah's life, he calls on God. And I call this as a family altar. Many, many homes, altars are broken down. It is like what Elijah found it in 1 Kings chapter 18. Elijah said unto all the people, come near to me. And all the people came near to him. And he repaired the broken altar. An altar that was broken down. In the busyness of life, you don't find time to pray together. Our knees must bow down every day as a family before the altar that you can build. Nurture this as a habit. Build a family altar.
I come from great heritage of men and women. I remember as a little kid going to Kerala. I never lived in Kerala, but when I went, my Appachan, my grandfather, man, before the break of the day, he's up and praying. And I will rub my eyes and wake up and come and say that here is Grandpa just, singing loud and reading scripture. I mean, it's still dark. I don't know. He just knew all the scripture by heart. And when he starts singing here, across the hill on the other side, there's another Appachan. He sings loud, that Appachan sings even louder. Then there's a competition going on between both of the Appachans. Who's singing louder and who's singing praying. So I'll rub my eyes and my grandpa will call me, and I was probably 4 or 5 years old. He'll call me, sit here. So I said, oh, why are you making all this noise? Let's sleep. That was my attitude. But here is a man who went to a different place, left his kith and kin. He and his cousin has moved to another place in Kerala, built a home, saying that we begin our day with a farmer. Begin our day at God's altar. Soon I saw rest of the gang, rest of the clan will sit around him on the floor. And then he will lead in prayer. That's family altar. Now that I've grown up, I understood, raising kids, what does it mean? As a father, to be a leader of the home, your knee must bow down before the leader of the household. That is God himself. Build altars. Abraham, no matter where you went, he pitched the tent, build the altar. In the wandering lives of immigrant lives, you must learn. You buy a house, find a job, build the altar. Because that's what will carry you. Some of us is broken. You meet once a week or maybe a few times a week that you do prayer. Make it a point every day. Meet together before God. Repair and erect some altars. If it has never been built, it's never a priority, build some altars in your home. Nurture a household spirituality. You don't come to worship, come to church to worship God, but you carry the presence of God, or having met with God in the morning, bring that presence into the house of God. And with others, together we worship what God has done to us as families. That's why we call marriage is a crucible for discipleship. We are transformed in the likeness of God in the household and together as a community. And we transform and get on God's agenda. So remember, here is what, Nehemiah is saying. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome. Fight for your families, your sons and daughters, your wives and your homes. What is your stake in this battle that is raging against the souls of your men and women in the church? Are you committed to fighting for your families rather than fighting within the family with each other? Fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, that they may walk with God. Your wife would be like a fruitful vine, like Psalmist says in Psalm 127. What does it mean to be a man? To be a man of honor and respected in the house. A man who will be godly man and set standard. What does it mean to follow a heart after God? So in conclusion, what are some walls that are broken in your family? What are some gates that are burned down? Take an assessment of what is things going on in your household. What are some emotional and relational aspects that need to be attended on right now? Develop some conflict resolution skills and strategies for the second half of your game. The next season of your life. Kids are going into a new school year. Or maybe a new school altogether. You're moving to a new city. As you come into the next season of your life, maybe of 3 months or 3 years or next 30 years, whatever your season of life is, come out with some strategy and some resolves, some commitment. This is going to be it. I'm not going to be all the challenges of parenting in this culture that we talked about yesterday. I'm not going to be overwhelmed by the problems we as a family will face. But we will remember the Lord. And we will fight for our families. We'll put our limited resources for the benefit and the betterment of our families. That's a priority that you're making. Seek help. If you desperately have some difficult things that you cannot handle, get some help. Don't go on like this. Develop some strategies and go. Fight for your families. Amen. Let's pray. Let's just sit quietly in God's presence and take an assessment of our own households. What are some broken walls? What are some burned down gates? What season of life and family life are you in? How do you foresee the next season of life? What do you foresee as some challenges and ahead of you? an honest assessment of where you have been in the last few years, what some areas that need to be attended on, and talk to God and seek His help and His divine intervention. Make a point to take time this week with your wife, maybe this afternoon or this evening. Go for a walk. Do something. Set some time apart. There are some unresolved issues, unaddressed pain and heartaches. You want to talk with your spouse and with your children. Ask for divine help. God, this is too complicated. I don't know how to handle. I really need help. Lord, we see in Nehemiah insurmountable challenges with limited resources, a defeated team, how he sets a new agenda, recasts a new vision for the project of rebuilding broken walls and rebuilding the burned down gates. There are some things that are falling apart, Lord. In my life, in my home, I need some divine intervention. I need a new strategy. I need new resources, new insights into complicated immigrant life. Lord, grant us a resolve to prioritize home, family, wife, husband that God has given and brought into your life, some children that God has given to you, a church that God has granted that you could be part of, some friends, a job. In the midst of all this, Lord, grant us wisdom. Give us a resolve to prioritize family and to fight for it, Lord. Heal us, restore us, teach us to forgive and put the past behind and forge ahead with new commitment and fresh vision, Lord. Thank you for this weekend that you've been doing in our lives and in this church, Lord. Thank you for the leadership of this church. Watch over them and guide them, Lord. Every family in this community of faith, I pray that, Lord, you would supernaturally do something, that they'll be a blessing to the city of San Diego, the Indian community and other communities here, Lord. Raise them as a powerful witness of your gospel in the city, in the suburbs, and that may your name will be declared loud and clear. That many would be encouraged, many would be healed and restored and given fresh hope, and many will come to saving knowledge of Jesus Christ, the Savior of the whole world. Pray that, Lord, people will grow to be your disciples, will bear your image and your character to the world around, in the workplaces, in the neighborhoods, in schools and colleges. They'll become mighty witnesses for you, Lord. Thank you for your work. I pray you would continue. Guide them through the next season of their lives. And may your name be glorified. And may your name be lifted up in everything that they engage in. Thank you, Lord. We love you. We give you praise. In Jesus' name. Amen.
Lord, I need you. Oh,